There is not a single power plant left in Ukraine that hasn't been damaged by Russian strikes, and as a result, Ukraine is on the verge of an energy collapse. Yesterday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky made this bold statement and warned that the coming winter will be difficult. The Washington Post writes that Russia's attacks on Ukraine's energy sector this year are more brutal and aggressive. According to officials and analysts familiar with the situation, the wave of massive Russian attacks is pushing Ukraine's energy grid to the brink of collapse. As Moscow seeks to demoralize the country, the White House is pressuring Kyiv to sign a peace agreement that is unfavorable to Ukraine. A series of Russian drone and missile attacks on energy infrastructure began in October and has since caused a significant electricity shortage. So, let's discuss what to really expect in this episode without any unnecessary illusions. My name is Alexei Pechier. Let's discuss this topic in detail together, but before we start this episode, I ask you to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and leave any comment under this episode. Also subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pechi News. The link to it is in the description of this video, where we post breaking news. So, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, stated the other day that as of today, there is not a single station in the Ukrainian energy system that has not been attacked by the Russians. Quote, and so, on one hand, Zelensky's statement carries a note of optimism that no matter how the enemy attacks Ukrainian energy and no matter how hard they try to break the Ukrainians, they are not succeeding. But the reality is becoming truly difficult, and I want to point out right away that this reality is becoming difficult precisely because the Russians, who are losing hundreds of thousands of dead soldiers at the front, are trying to win the war by attacking only civilian infrastructure. This is clearly not a sign of strength but of weakness, yet the recent strikes are making themselves felt. Hundreds of thousands, including hundreds of families, were left without electricity in 7 Ukrainian regions as of December 14 due to Russian strikes on the energy system. Russian troops attacked Odessa all night on December 14 with various aerial weapons, and on December 13, Odessa faced a massive combined Russian assault. And local residents reported a lack of electricity in most of the city as a result of the Russian attacks. On the morning of December 13, consumers in Odessa, Chernihiv, Kherson, Dnipropetrovsk, Kirovohrad, and Mykolaiv regions lost electricity due to the war. And these are just examples from the last couple of days. And on this matter, the Washington Post writes that, according to officials and analysts familiar with the situation, the wave of massive Russian attacks is pushing Ukraine's energy grid to the brink of collapse as Moscow seeks to demoralize the country. On the one hand, and on the other hand, we have the White House, the Donald Trump administration, which is pressuring Ukraine to sign a peace agreement. A series of Russian drone and missile attacks on energy infrastructure, as the publication writes, began in October and since then has caused a significant electricity shortage across the country as winter cold sets in. Here, several people familiar with the situation explain the logic behind the Russian strikes. They explain that these strikes threaten to completely disable the power transmission systems from the west, where most of Ukraine's electricity is currently produced, to the east. In other words, this will effectively split Ukraine into 2 parts. Next is a quote from the Washington Post. If we are not on the verge of a complete power outage in the east of the country, then we are very close to it, said a high-ranking European diplomat who spoke on condition of anonymity. Experts agree that it is almost impossible to predict exactly how many attacks Russia will need to achieve its goal of a complete power outage in part of the country, including Kyiv, because it will depend on which targets are hit and whether Ukraine has backup resources for quick recovery. However, Ukraine, which has long suffered from energy attacks, is undoubtedly in one of the worst situations in its entire history. The attacks have also weakened the already limited air defense capabilities, exposing serious vulnerabilities that could complicate the protection of the rest of the power grid. By the way, this is exactly how the entire Western media and all Western diplomats currently see the situation in Ukraine. They see it this way. So, the energy sector is on the verge of collapse, and the Russians are essentially trying to split the country in two, to break up the power grid that transmits electricity from west to east. And one of the solutions proposed by Kiev could be an energy truce where Russia would stop attacking the energy infrastructure and Ukraine would stop attacking Russian oil infrastructure. Because now Ukraine is not only attacking oil refineries but also striking oil production sites. Already, by the way, even on the Caspian Shelf, that is in the Caspian Sea. However, last week Moscow stated that it is not ready to consider even such a ceasefire. That's all you need to know about the barbaric Russians. They are barbarians because they openly stated that they intend to continue targeting civilian infrastructure. They are savages, they are wild creatures who say, yes, we will continue to commit acts of terror, strike civilian targets, hit homes, hit power substations. Well, they can't live any other way and can't get along with anyone. Notice that Russians, I can't recall even a couple of years in history when Russians lived in peace. No, they're always at war with someone, always arguing with someone. That's their nature. And I'll give you another quote from the Washington Post. Although hours-long power outages, dark streets, and the noise of diesel generators have become common in Kyiv this winter, the attacks seem more consistent and targeted. Deputy Minister of Energy of Ukraine Mykola Kolesnik made the statement in November. Russia launched about 5,000 drones and missiles compared to 2,000 per month at the beginning of the year, including hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles specifically targeting power plants, the power grid, and gas infrastructure. Often focusing on a specific region, air attacks are also becoming more frequent, leaving less time to repair the damage. Kolesnik added that at the beginning of December, energy workers managed to reduce the power outage time in Kyiv to 2.5 hours a day. But a major attack on the night of December 5 critically damaged the power grid again, and the electricity supply in Kyiv sharply deteriorated. But I will also add a quote here from the chief executive officer of DTEK, Maxim Timchenko, quote, "We are responding as quickly as we can, but it is becoming more and more difficult. We have lost a significant part of our capacity. The main task now is to find replacement equipment in different parts of Europe that we can quickly deliver to Ukraine. The most important components are transformers and gas compressors. But it's important to understand that in addition to splitting Ukraine's energy grid into two parts, the Kremlin is also pursuing another strategy of creating so-called energy islands, where certain regions will be cut off from any production and supply of electricity, as well as from the existing transmission system. Nevertheless, despite constant attacks and what are obvious attempts by the Russians to disrupt the transmission of electricity between the two parts of the country, Ukraine's energy system is still functioning. And now experts say that the situation is critical but not fatal. They say that if Ukraine receives the necessary materials for quick repairs and Russia does not bomb the same places again, then the repairs can be carried out quickly. And this won't be the end of the world. But still, friends, write your opinion on this topic in the comments. I would add that Russians, no matter who or what they believe in, will definitely be repaid 100-fold for everything they've done to Ukrainians. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell. If you found this episode interesting and got some useful information from it, you can support our work with your donation or by getting a paid sponsorship subscription to this YouTube channel. All the details and links are in the description of this video where it says support Alexei Pechi's channel. Choose any format that is convenient for you. I'm grateful for any opportunity and your support. Take care. Goodbye, everyone.